He worked the floor of a steel factory in Rosario, Argentina, coaching a neighborhood football team on the side, never imagining his youngest son would one day be called the greatest player in the history of the sport. On the 8th of August 2026, Jorge Messi, the father and longtime agent of Lionel Messi, died at a hospital in his native Rosario at the age of 68, after what the family described as a prolonged health situation. Today, we're telling the real story of the man who stood behind football's greatest icon, the sacrifices he made, the deals he built, and the family he leaves behind. The news was confirmed early Saturday morning by Sanatorio Centro, the medical center in Rosario where Jorge had been receiving care. Dr. Carlos Macchi, the hospital's medical director, confirmed that Jorge Messi passed away in the early hours of the morning and stated that no further details surrounding the cause of death would be released, out of respect for the family's privacy. Tributes arrived almost instantly from across the football world. Newell's Old Boys, the Rosario club where Lionel began his youth career, wrote that Jorge was a renowned supporter, a businessman, and the father who, together with his wife Celia, underpinned the career of the best player of all time with vision, rigor, and affection. FC Barcelona released a formal statement from its president and board of directors, thanking Jorge Messi for entrusting the club with the beginnings and the most glorious years of his son's career. The Argentine Football Association expressed its sadness at the passing of, in their words, the father of our captain and emblem. CONMEBOL, South American football's governing body, also sent its condolences to the family. This moment had, in some ways, been building for months. Back in June, during Argentina's opening World Cup match against Algeria, Lionel Messi was visibly emotional after scoring and admitted afterward that his emotion had nothing to do with football, saying he had been through some difficult, complicated days. Speculation followed immediately, and about a week later, the Messi family released a statement confirming that Jorge was currently going through a health situation while asking the media and public to respect the family's privacy during the process. At the end of July, Lionel skipped the MLS All-Star game, reportedly to be with his father, before returning to action just days later. Jorge Horacio Messi was born on el 1 de enero de 1958 in Rosario, in Argentina Santa Fe province. He grew up in a footballing culture that ran through nearly every household in the city, and as a young man, he played for Newell's Old Boys youth teams himself before turning to work. For years, Jorge worked at Acinda, a large steel manufacturing plant in Rosario, building a stable, working-class life for his family. In his time away from the factory floor, he coached local youth football, including at Club Atlético Grandoli, the neighborhood club just a short walk from the family's home on Calle La Valleja. It was there that Jorge first coached his youngest son, a small, quiet boy nicknamed La Pulga, the Flea, because of his tiny stature and lightning, fast footwork. Jorge and his wife, Celia Cuccittini, who worked as a cleaner, raised 4 children together: Rodrigo, Matias, Maria Sol, and Lionel. Life wasn't easy. Coaches from that era have recalled Jorge admitting he sometimes wasn't sure his son could make it to training because the family didn't have enough money for petrol. Then came a discovery that would change everything. As Lionel grew older, it became clear he wasn't growing at the same rate as his teammates, some 15 kilograms lighter and several inches shorter than boys his age. Doctors diagnosed him with a growth hormone deficiency, a condition that came with expensive, ongoing treatment the family could not easily afford on a factory worker's income. It was a defining crossroads, the kind of moment that ends many promising young athletic careers before they ever truly begin. Jorge refused to let that happen. In September of the year 2000, he brought his 3-year-old son across the Atlantic Ocean for a trial with FC Barcelona's famed youth academy, La Masia. What happened next has become one of the most famous stories in football history. Barcelona's youth coaches were stunned by what they saw, and the club agreed to sign Lionel and cover the costs of his hormone treatment, an offer no Argentine club had been able to match. Later that year, the Messi family relocated permanently to Barcelona, and Lionel would never live in Argentina again. Jorge officially became his son's agent when Lionel was just 14 years old, a role he would hold for the rest of his life, eventually overseeing the football operations behind what became known as Leo Messi Limited Company. From that point forward, Jorge Messi's story became inseparable from his son's rise. He was the man in the background during Lionel's record-breaking 672 goals across 778 appearances for Barcelona. He negotiated the contracts. He managed the sponsorships. He handled the pressure of representing the most scrutinized athlete in world football, all while trying to remain, as much as possible, a father first. That dual role wasn't without controversy. In 2016, Spanish prosecutors pursued a tax fraud case against Jorge, accusing him of helping defraud Spain's tax authorities of several million euros related to his son's image rights between 2007 and 2009. Lionel was ultimately cleared of wrongdoing, with prosecutors determining he had followed his father's instructions without knowledge of any fraud. Jorge, however, faced legal consequences from the case, a difficult chapter that the family navigated together and moved past as Lionel's career continued its historic ascent. As previously mentioned, Jorge Messi's cause of death has not been released to the public. What is known is that his health decline played out over several months, from the visible emotional toll it took on his son at the World Cup in June, to the family's public statement acknowledging his condition, to his final admission to Sanatorio Centro in Rosario, the city where his entire story began. Out of respect for the family, and in line with the hospital's own statement, we won't speculate further on the specifics of his illness. Jorge Messi is survived by his wife, Celia Cucitini, and his 4 children. His son Lionel is, of course, the captain of the Argentina national team, and widely regarded as the greatest football player of all time. Lionel's older brothers, Rodrigo and Matias, have long worked within the family's business operations, largely away from the public spotlight. His younger sister, Maria Sol, has similarly kept a private, low-profile life. Despite decades in the public eye through his son's fame, Jorge and Celia maintained a notably tight-knit, private family structure, with football and family remaining the 2 constants at the center of their lives in both Rosario and later Barcelona. Jorge Messi's own financial rise mirrored his son's football career. From a steel factory worker in Rosario earning a modest wage, he became the architect and manager of one of the largest personal business empires in world sports, encompassing image rights, endorsement deals, real estate, and Lionel's contracts across FC Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, and Inter Miami. While Jorge's personal net worth was never independently or officially disclosed, his role as CEO of his son's companies placed him at the center of a football and business empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, built quite literally from nothing over the course of 3 decades. Jorge Messi's life carries a lesson that resonates far beyond football. He was not a wealthy man. He was not a football executive with connections or resources. He was a factory worker and a neighborhood coach who made an enormous gamble, moving his entire family across the world for a 3-year-old son with a rare medical condition and an uncertain future. That decision, driven by belief rather than certainty, changed the course of football history. His story stands as a powerful reminder that the people working quietly in the background, making impossible sacrifices without recognition, are sometimes the ones who make greatness possible in the first place. Jorge Messi never scored a goal, never lifted a trophy on a football pitch, and never asked for the spotlight. But without him, there may never have been a Lionel Messi as the world came to know him. He leaves behind his wife Celia, his children Rodrigo, Matias, Maria Sol, and Lionel, and a legacy stitched into every chapter of modern football history. Rest in peace, Jorge. The sacrifices you made will echo through the game for generations. If Jorge Messi's story, his sacrifices, or his role in shaping his son's incredible career moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below sharing what his story means to you. And if you want more respectful, in-depth tributes to the people who shaped the world of sports, don't forget to subscribe to Your Star Facts.